haven't filmed in forever because life has been mental and I don't know what I'm doing with my life, but we're just gonna vibe it. We're just gonna vibe it. Yeah, we're just gonna vibe it. We're just gonna vibe it. Yeah, we're gonna vibe it. Gonna figure it out as we go. Do 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 do. Don't know what that was, so if that makes it in, enjoy it. Yeah. Hello everyone and welcome back to my YouTube channel. How have you been? I hope you're well. I'm doing good. It's running up to Christmas and I haven't started my Christmas shopping, so it's gonna get stressful pretty quick, but you know, we'll make it through. We'll figure it out. Today is just gonna be a chill one because I haven't filmed in a little while. I just wanna have like a nice chatty video. And today I kind of wanna take a look back at Wicked, the musical. I did read the book back when I was in sixth form. If you're American, I think you'd call that high school. That was many, many years ago. So I don't really remember the details of the book, so I can't really talk about that. And I don't have the book here, so even if I'd had time to read the book before filming this video, I wouldn't have been able to because I think it's at my mum's house. And I haven't seen the film yet. I'll be honest, I don't know if I am fussed about seeing the film. Maybe that's my teenage coping mechanism of contrarianism and just like not engaging in mainstream culture because it's stupid. It's not. It's a coping mechanism when you don't feel like you fit in. I'm aware of this. I don't know, I'm very disillusioned with the capitalist kind of film industry. Like the fact that it's two films. Wicked didn't need to be two films, you know, but a lot of my friends have seen it and said that it's amazing. So like maybe at some point I'll watch it, maybe for a video when the second film comes out. If you want me to do like an adaptation videos about Wicked, either the book to the musical or the musical to the musical film, or both, let me know, and that's something that I'll put on the agenda maybe for next year. Well, book to musical next year. Musical to movie musical, I would probably wait until the second film is out, and I don't know when it's slated to come out. So like that will be like a little ways in the future if you want to see that, but yeah, let me know. Today I just want to talk about Wicked the musical and kind of looking back at why it was such a pivotal musical in my life as a young theatre fan, and also why it's lasted so long, because obviously Wicked hasn't been around as long as musicals like Phantom or Les Mis, but it's been going strong like for quite a while. And you know, there have been lots of musicals that are arguably just as good that haven't. So I think that would be really interesting to look at why I think particularly the themes of the musical have helped it endure as long as it has, and where I think it fits in our changing times to when it was originally written and produced. I've just remembered I didn't look up when it was written and produced, so I'm going to do that now. So I can talk with some authority, but also just a disclaimer, like I said, I just want this to be a chatty video. I haven't done any research. This is not going to be like an in-depth analysis. This is going to be mostly my thoughts and my musings, having kind of grown up with Wicked in a way, seeing the film come out and the reception that the film had, like just kind of my thoughts as a person who has consumed this musical. And is a fan of this musical. Not like a mega fan or anything, but like I enjoy the musical. I've paid to see it twice. You know, it's nostalgic for me. So yeah, if you're down for that, keep on watching. My blanket's fallen off my scarf. Yes, I did crochet this. So years ago actually. When did I make this? It was pre-pandemic. I want to say like 2017, 2018 I would have made this. It's literally just a massive granny square. It's nothing special. I love that. I was so proud, like, yes, I made this. It's nothing special. It's like, it's just one stitch over and over again. Right, when did Wicked come out?
A few moments later.
The book came out in 1995. I didn't realize it was that old. Just so we've got the dates. So Wicked opened on Broadway in 2003, opened on the West End in 2006. So it will be coming up to its 20-year anniversary. Wicked is that old on the West End? It's nearly 20 years old. It seems just yesterday it was having its 10-year anniversary. What happened? I was not expecting that. Okay, cool. Makes sense though. Yeah, so let's start off with my kind of personal relationship with Wicked. Wicked was kind of like my coming of age musical. I think all of us that have been fans of musical theatre for a long time, who discovered musical theatre as a kid or as a teenager, we all have that one musical, whether it was the big musical that came out at that time or when we were around that age, or just a musical that we discover at that age that really speaks to us, that is kind of like our coming of age musical, the musical that, you know, that we felt all the feelings. And for me, Wicked was that one. And I think there are several reasons for that. So just for context, when I was a teenager, I went to an all-girls secondary school, which is like from the age of 11 to, technically 11 to 16, because our sixth form, by the time I got to sixth form, boys were in the sixth form. And Wicked being, even though there is like a love triangle, of course there is. Oh, disclaimer, slight spoilers. I just realised, yeah, if you haven't seen Wicked, there will be like minor spoilers. I'm not filtering myself. So if you haven't seen Wicked and you don't want any spoilers at all, then click off. But yeah, like of course there's a love triangle in Wicked, but like the two main characters, I don't think this is a spoiler, are women. It's Elphaba and Glinda. Myself and my other like musical theatre friends who loved Wicked, I feel like everyone had like their character that like was the one that they resonated with. The marketing for the merch of Wicked has always played into that, like the green and black for Elphaba and the pink and white for Glinda. And that was the same for me. For me, Elphie was the person that I resonated with so much. She was my favorite. I really resonate with her story for a bunch of reasons. And actually, Elphaba was my first ever dream role as a teenager. She's not so much now. Like, obviously, if if the team on Wicked was like, please play Elphaba, I would not say no. But like, if I live my life not playing Elphaba, I'll be fine. But yeah, she was originally, I remember saying to my choir friends that I wanted to be the first black Elphaba. Obviously, that didn't happen for me. Which is like fine, but yeah, she was my original dream role. I loved Elphaba and everything that she stood for. I can't speak to the people who were on Team Glinda, but again, I'm sure there were plenty of people who were like, yeah, Elphie's all right, but like Glinda, she's great. And I think both of the characters have their perks. So I'm just gonna look at my notes because it's easier. Again, speaking for myself, but also trying to look objectively, the things that I think would really draw people to Elphaba if they resonate with it is the fact that, you know, Elphaba's the outsider, she's the loner, she's misunderstood, she's bookish and a bit more geeky, all of the black, you know. If you're into those kinds of like darker subcultures, those kind of edgy, not following the system subcultures, Elphaba is definitely what you're more likely to gravitate to if you're just looking at Wicked, for example. The other thing about Elphaba is that she was stereotypically ugly because of the green skin thing. I have seen commentary about the racial coding of Elphaba. I think there's partly to do with that, just thinking back to my childhood and teenagehood, but I think even without that, if you're just a kid who doesn't feel pretty, Elphaba's story is really going to speak to you, especially the fact that like she gets Fiera at the end. There's the whole popular sequence where Glinda tells her she's beautiful and she can't like take it. Like, there's a lot of stuff there in terms of beauty standards and how you portray yourself and your own beauty. Superficial beauty I'm talking about here, that I think would still resonate. And then also the fact that Elphaba is very much substance overlooks, which I think a lot of people who don't feel pretty, not everyone, I can't speak for everyone, but like I think as a young person who felt that way, there was definitely a lot of being like, well, pretty isn't even important anyway, what's more important is your mind. Like, again, not wrong, but also it's a way of coping, right? And so I think that would really resonate with the Team Elphaba people. Team Glinda, can't really speak from personal experience, but the things I think would draw people to more Team Glinda is the fact that she's popular. If you're one of those popular musical theatre kids, like, what's that chick in High School Musical? Is it like Shanae or whatever, or Sharpay? Is it Sharpay? Editing me, find out. I've not seen High School Musical. Oh my gosh, yeah, take away my musical theatre card. But yeah, I think it's Sharpay, the pink girl who's like, her. I love how I've not seen that film, but I still know like the memes. You know, if you're one of those musical theatre people, you're gonna love Glinda. She's confident, she's bubbly, she's, you know, she's fun, she's lighthearted, she's not too serious. High notes for days, you're gonna love it. I think also if you're into pink, like it's basically like the non-girly girl and the girly girl. If you're a girly girl, Glinda is all of the girly girl, like pink, pretty dresses, immaculate hair, immaculate makeup, like fun-loving, just like zesty lust for life that Elphaba doesn't really have. She's also rich. I think, I don't know why I put that down actually. I guess because I went to a school where there were a lot of rich people, because everyone, you know, went to the private primary school to learn how to pass the test to get into my school. If you're British and you live in Kent or anywhere else where they have the 11+, you know what I'm talking about. Elphaba's wealth doesn't really come into it, but Elphaba also isn't poor if you think about it, because like her dad like runs Munchkin Land and like they live in a massive house. So like Elphaba isn't poor, but I think Glinda portrays like the conspicuous display of wealth. You know, when she comes in with all her bags and stuff. I guess it's not so much like the fact that she's rich. I think it's the fact that she's more materialistic. I think that's it. She's kind of like Elle Woods before she goes to law school, right? And then lastly, she's stereotypically beautiful. So if you identify or aspire to that, you know, you really enjoy looking physically beautiful, you like doing your hair, you like doing your makeup, and you think those things are important and fun, either for your own self-esteem, which is hopefully why you would enjoy those things, but even if it's just, you know, you think that that's important because of how you're perceived, or for boys, or whatever it is, talking about being a teenager, you're gonna gravitate towards Glinda because that's what she's about, you know? I think the fact you have these two female characters that show two very different ways to be a woman in the world, and neither of them massively compromise on that. Like even at the end of the show, Glinda's still in her pink dress in her bubble, being like this lovely, beautiful person, and that's who she is in The Wizard of Oz, right? So you can't like get rid of that. And Elphaba, yes, you've got the popular scene where, you know, they're brushing her hair and all of that stuff, but like neither of them have to dramatically change who they are and change their principles. And I think that's really empowering, of being like, you can be yourself. You don't have to change yourself to be, you know, to be a force of good in the world. Which leads us very nicely on to the kind of endings of the two characters as well. And I think both of the characters, they have very different endings. The thing that allows people to really connect with Glinda is the fact that she's really the one that has the redemption arc. She goes from being the person who doesn't really care about other people, who is that mean girl because she's just very ignorant in her way, to getting what she wants, and like her being the good witch and being like, I've got all of everything that I wanted, but I still feel hollow. So actually learning that, oh no, wait, principles are important, and kind of taking on the mantle that Elphaba couldn't because she's limited, you know. Cheesy. And I think for Elphaba, the thing that allows people to really stand with her is the fact that she sacrifices herself for the greater good. We all gravitate to a martyr, or, you know, the little guy having to make the sacrifice for the greater good. You know, I think that's a story, at least in the Western world, that we love. I think as a culture, we think that it is noble to sacrifice yourself for your principles. As long as we agree with those principles as well. And the way it's framed, like fighting the good fight for the animals is a good thing for Elphaba to be doing, and therefore her sacrifice for that cause, we'll get behind that. Do you know what I mean? Glinda's redemption arc means that it's okay to like her in the beginning. Elphaba's sacrifice arc makes her the tragic figure, which is like, oh yeah, we were always right to root for her. Does that make sense? Depending on which side you fall on. And then also it does mean that even when you fall on one side or the other, you still like the other character. Like, I was always Team Elphaba. I didn't dislike Glinda. You know what I mean? And I'm sure it's the same way, like girls who grew up, or just anyone who grew up being like, yes, we stan Glinda, is still gonna be like, but Elphaba's a badass, you know? Also, this was completely a mistake, but I picked up my theatre mug for this video, which that was just a happy coincidence. I think the last thing, and this is more of the teenage thing. I think as a grown-ass adult appreciating this musical, this doesn't matter. But 15-year-old me is like, this matters. But like, they both get their love story with Fiyero, and obviously, spoiler, Elphaba gets him in the end, but they both get some Fiyero action. I don't think Fiyero deserves their attention. And he does come around quicker than Glinda, so maybe he does deserve their attention. He does have a better moral compass than he lets on when he first comes into the picture. And again, going back to the Elphaba thing with her being stereotypically ugly, seen by the other characters as ugly, you know, the fact that she gets the guy in the end, that totally fed into my teen insecurities. Just like, oh, the one hot guy in the whole musical does like me, yay. You know, obviously that's gonna feed in. I mean, is it problematic that she kind of like changes him because he was totally like, yeah, fuck society, and then he's like, oh no, wait, this green girl made me save a lion? I don't know. Again, this is not a deep dive, but as a teenager, if you're like, boys don't like me, seeing the one that no one thinks is physically attractive get the guy, like, yeah, to the point where like, even as a scarecrow, he still wants to be with her. Like, that's huge. Like, find a guy who wants to be with you, even if you have to turn him into a scarecrow to save his life. You know, I hope that me and Josh are at that point in our relationship. I'll never know because I can't turn him into a scarecrow, but, you know, we'll see. Editing me. Josh says he's on the fence, but he's not saying no. Isn't that right, sweetie?
Yes.
Do you want to say hi to the camera?
Oh, like and subscribe.
I didn't write any notes for Glinda, but I think Glinda, you know, she's the stereotypically beautiful one, so I don't think she needs Fiyero in the end. I think Fiyero is part of her redemption arc, because they're from the same world, right? They're both just like rich, ignorant kids who don't need to worry about shit. And so why worry about shit? Why make yourself miserable thinking about awful things? Just have fun and dance through life. So the fact that he gets to the point of this is not okay before she does is part of her redemption arc of being like, oh wait, it's not all happy-go-lucky. So I think she needs that, and I think that's why it's important that she lets him go as well. It's not a, I'm dumping your ass because you're an idiot. It's her being like, oh no, wait, you guys are actually the same. Like, on the surface, we're the same, me and Fiyero, but actually inside, it's you two, and like, go off. Which makes it okay that she doesn't get the guy because she lets him go. Yeah, and then I guess the last thing I want to say about why the characters of Elphaba and Glinda are so important in that, apart from the fact that obviously they're the main characters, so they're the ones that you're going to gravitate towards, is the fact that Elphaba has conscience, like a conscience, and power, like magical power, and what she needs is acceptance. And what Glinda has is acceptance and love and adoration, but what she needs is conscience and power. Thinking about, as a young girl, what you want or feel that you need, that you're lacking as you're growing up in the world. Those of us who felt like no one accepts us, no one understands us, that's Elphaba's journey. Those who feel like, I don't really know what I stand for, and I don't feel very deeply about anything, and I don't know that there's anything that I could do, even if I knew what I could do about it. That's Glinda's story. So yeah, I just think as characters, they're really well-rounded, and between them kind of show, I've already said it, but show the complete spectrum of what womanhood is, that young women like me, but not just women, but I think speaking as a woman, seeing that you can be one or the other, when so much media, especially in like the 2000s, was like, you have to be this specific type of, like, this is what womanhood is, you know. Obviously it wasn't as bad as like, the further back in time you go, the worse that gets. But I remember feeling like there was a certain type of way to be a woman, you know, in terms of if you wanted to be successful, if you wanted people to like you, like if you wanted people to be physically attracted to you, this is what you had to be. And so a musical where it's like, but there's also this other option, and that is also just as valid, with banging songs. You know, I think that was really integral to why I think it speaks to people even today. I mean, I can't speak for the Gen Zs and Gen Alphas. I technically know some Gen Zs. I know no Gen Alphas. I have no children in my life. But yeah, I would imagine similar things, you know, probably with more nuance, because, you know, as times change, things get more nuanced and more complex. But as a baseline, I still think it holds up. Clearly it holds up because people are going to see the film and people are loving it. And I don't think that's just because witches are in the zeitgeist or people are fans of Ariana Grande. I think that is also true. Like, witches are cool at the moment. Ariana Grande is one of the biggest pop stars in the world. But also I think it is people who love the musical. And also I think the reason people come back won't just be because Witches and Ariana, it's also the story and the characters. And I think Elphaba and Glinda are really compelling characters. Now I want to talk about kind of in general, we've talked about the characters, now I want to talk about the themes and why I think the themes still resonate today. Let's start off with the more kind of personal themes, which we've already kind of talked about. So themes of identity, themes of love, themes of friendship, all of those things come into play in this musical because it's a musical about people and how they are relating to each other and relating to themselves. Elphaba, Glinda and Fiyero, the way that all of them fundamentally change in terms of their outlook on life, their perspectives, they're forced to change how they see the world. Because all three of them, to varying degrees, are invested in the system that is in Oz, right? Elphie starts off wanting to be with the wizard. Glinda is obviously very rich from wherever, I think she's from the north of Oz, if I remember rightly. You know, she's from a wealthy family up there. Fiyero is a flipping prince. Like, they're all invested in the system, and one by one, their reliance on the system gets shattered. Elphaba fully rejects the system. Fiyero tries to get involved, but then he sees the amount of propaganda that's happening. We're going to get onto propaganda in a sec. And then you've got Glinda, who I think is very much in denial for the longest time, because she's like, as long as I'm happy, it's fine. And then realizes, oh no, I have a conscience and I'm not happy. Why am I not happy? Because all of this fuck shit is happening. But going back to the theme of identity, all of that fundamentally changes how you see and perceive yourself, right? If you've always seen yourself as this happy-go-lucky person and like, as long as I'm happy and everyone around me is happy, everything's fine. And you have that glass shattered moment of like, even with that philosophy, I'm still not fine. That's going to change you and change how you see yourself.
Also, what I forgot to mention from Elphaba's perspective is that if you've always told yourself the narrative that once I find the people who will recognize me for my talent and my worth in that area, my life will be fixed and everything will be fine and perfect and dandy, to have that taken away from you because your principles won't let you continue that narrative any longer, and then you have to come up with a new narrative for yourself, that is also going to completely change how you identify with yourself and how you see yourself.
And those kind of personal themes, themes of identity, themes of belonging, friendship, love, that's always going to be relevant because those are things that we're always going to be struggling with. We all of us have had moments where we're like, I don't even know who I am anymore, or this friendship that seemed really important to me has died, whether it's, you know, in a huge fight or if it's just fizzled out and you just turn around and you're like, this person was such a big part of my life and I haven't heard from them in years, and what happened, you know? Themes of love, like we all have loves that have not worked out, whether it's just, you know, falling out of love with a person, a really toxic situation, having to move away, just realizing that you're not compatible. You know, there's lots of, everyone has love drama at some point in their life. All of the interpersonal themes, obviously that's always going to resonate, but I think there's more happening, and I think there's something about our current moment, particularly for the film. I know I'm not talking about the film, but the fact that the film is so successful, there's something about this particular moment. And I think it's the various moments that have happened over the last 20 years that have kept it going, if that makes sense, in a way. Hear me out. The first theme I want to talk about is the theme of power, both political power and personal power, because I think both are explored in Wicked to a very vast extent. Elphaba is lauded for her power. When she arrives at Shiz, she does some magic stuff because she's scared for her sister, and then it kicks off the whole The Wizard of Eye because Madame Horrible is like, oh my god, you're amazing, such talent. You know, Madame Horrible being so evil but so fabulous. That is Elphaba's gift, is her magical power, which I think is a form of personal power, right? She doesn't have, you know, social clout, but she has this phenomenal magical power. And then she uses her like kind of more mundane personal power in her rejection of, you're not going to use me for your own ends, for my like material gain, like absolutely not. Glinda, on the other hand, she has a lot of social power, but she wants magical power. She wants to have the special one-on-one lessons with Morrible. She wants to get like the Good Witch gig. And she only gets that when she plays, when she goes along with the system. She's not really playing the system until the very end, and that's kind of questionable. That's more kind of implied that in the future she will play the system. She only has power within the system that exists, right? Because Elphaba rejects that system, that gives her a place. And because she's willing to go along with that system, she is able to keep her power and become Glinda the Good Witch, right? But like I said, she also has social power in terms of popularity. That's why she's a useful pawn, because she's very likable and she's very personable. But she also uses that power for good as well. For example, in the dance, you know, when everyone's laughing at Elphaba because of her stupid hat, and Glinda sees Elphaba's strength and her personal power of being like, fuck you guys, I'm gonna dance anyway. And Glinda's like, you know what, I'm gonna dance with you. And because Glinda does that, everyone else follows suit. She is a leader in that way. She's kind of like an influencer. Like, it's not because she has particular leadership skills necessarily at the beginning, but it's because people aspire to be her or be like her or to follow her. She just has a magnetic personality, and that's where her power lies, which is implied at the end of the musical, that she's going to go on to use that to be Glinda the Good. You know, it's not just about making things spin around. It's also about, you know, can you get people to go with you? Madame Morrible and the Wizard, 100% political power. Madame Morrible also has magical power, like with the storms and all of that stuff. And also like social power. I'm assuming it's the same in the film, but definitely if you've seen the musical, Madame Morrible is a Madame Morrible is like a big character. She's a diva, and we're here for it until she's doing political fuck shit. But that is a power that Morrible wields as well as her magical power. But because she's working with the wizard, which the wizard is completely impotent in the power department, he has no power. It is all smoke and mirrors. But between them, they have political power. They are the political elite. They're running the show. They're running the propaganda. Again, we're going to get to propaganda in more detail. You know, they rely on bamboozling the populace and kind of owning the political narrative to keep their power, which means that everyone has to be in line. And then lastly, in terms of personal power, and also this is part of the dialogue with how political power affects as well, so they kind of like intertwine, is in the choices that Elphaba, Glinda, and Fiero make. Elphaba rejecting the wizard, she's rejecting power and prestige. She's using her personal power and rejecting the political power that she could have. For Fiero, when he chooses to help Elphaba free the lion cub, when he chooses to save Elphaba's life, despite the fact that there's going to be repercussions for that, there's going to be punishment for that. Again, a rejection of political power, a rejection of the systems in place. And then for Glinda, even though she's the last to come around, she still chooses to help Elphie multiple times. And then at the end, using her political power, her political and social power really, to punish the people in charge, making the wizard abdicate, arresting Madame Morrible, using that power at the end to try and right the wrongs. It's all about power, and like, what power do you have? What is your response to the power around you, to the systems of power that you exist in, and what do you do about it? The next theme I want to talk about is social responsibility and morals, because that feeds into the power theme as well. All of these themes are interconnected, obviously. It's a story. The inciting incident is the fighting for the emancipation of the animals. You know, the fact that animals are losing the ability to speak. That starts Elphaba on her journey to be like, well, the wizard's gonna sort that out. If I get in with the wizard, I can tell him what's going on and we can fix it. And that's, to be honest, her I Want song is all about, if I get in with the wizard, I'll be accepted. The inciting incident of the animal plight is like, oh no, I really need to do this to help the animals. And when she goes to see the wizard, she's like, the animals. And he's like, yeah. So I just do a one person retelling. It's just like, yeah. And obviously that is a social struggle that, especially at this time, I think we can all see parallels in our own world with so much that is happening all over the world. But then, like, kind of on a more personal sense, because that's kind of macro scale, the animal thing. I mean, it's important to Elphaba's story, don't get me wrong, but that is a external, she's fighting for this thing, right? I think a more internal manifestation of this theme is when Glinda, at the beginning of Act 2, is still feeling unhappy despite getting everything she wants. I think for the audience members that aren't, you know, into social justice, which, like, is a Broadway West End musical. Not everyone who goes to see it is going to be into social justice. They just want to have a good time. For those people, there's Glinda being like, I got everything I want and I'm still not happy. Which is Glinda's whole thing, right? Glinda's, like, guiding light in her life is, am I happy? The fact that she gets everything she wants or wanted and she's still not happy, why is that? Because of the injustice around her. That is the part of this theme that pulls in the people who are like, you know what, I'm not going to go to a protest. Like, who has the time? Who has the energy? Nothing's going to change anything anyway. And it's like, okay, but how is witnessing this and doing nothing and going along with it making you feel? Getting in touch with your emotions, which is why I think so many systems that we currently live in try and separate us from our emotions with distraction and consumerism of content, of material goods, of so many things. That's the aspect in which this theme can also come in. It's not just the fact of like, oh, we're doing this huge like fight for the animals. It's also like, when you don't stick to your principles, if you are aware of injustice and you do absolutely nothing about it, can you really be happy? Also, when it comes to like things like complicity, like Elphaba completely sacrifices the life she could have had because she doesn't want to be complicit. Eventually Fiero does the same. Glinda, because of her position that she ends up with by going along with it, is able to take over the system, and then hopefully she hasn't been corrupted by it, and she then does go on to do good. That's what's implied, that's how it's framed. But two of the three main characters have to completely give up the life they could have had to avoid complicity at various stages. Like, Elphaba never wants to be complicit. Fiero tries being complicit and he's like, nah dog, I'm out. He does a Dragon's Den, is like, I'm out. And the final thing on this particular theme, which I've seen a lot of commentary on because you cannot avoid commentary about the film at the moment, is the fact that both Glinda and Fiyero in the story have to become socially conscious to become the characters that they eventually become at the end of the show, which is a huge topic of conversation that is happening in the year of our Lord 2024 in December. There's a lot of talk about people becoming socially conscious, class conscious, being aware of how systems affect marginalized groups, how different systems intertwine and interconnect and intersect. Glinda and Fiyero, because of their privilege, do not have to engage in that. And until the events of Wicked, it's implied that they haven't. Like, just the way that they behave, the way they act, their attitudes and philosophies on life, they've never had to consider anyone who's been marginalized, how the systems that they are comfortable existing in negatively affect the other communities that live in the same country as them. Elphaba clearly has more of a social conscience. I think it's safe to read into that. That's because of the fact that she is different. She has green skin. She's weird. She's awkward. She doesn't have pretty privilege. She has privilege in terms of wealth, but she also has the abuse of her parents, you know, basically having to be a caretaker for her sister, living with a disabled sibling. Yes, that's not a marginalization Elphaba has, but I'm sure she's witnessed the marginalization that may have been caused by her sister being disabled. Elphaba is way more tuned in to how, like, if you don't have all of the privileges that you can have, like, things aren't easy. Both Glinda and Fiyero have to make the journey from privilege and apathy, the apathy that their privilege gives them, the apathy that they have the space to feel, into social consciousness because of a friend of theirs standing up for what is right and standing up against injustice, opening their eyes to the injustices around them. And then the last theme I want to talk about, which I think is just a major theme, is good and evil. Obviously, the fact that because of propaganda, Elphaba is depicted as evil even though she's fighting for good. The fact that Glinda, because of how she appears, and again propaganda, is seen as good even though she is complicit in the atrocities that the regime is dishing out, for want of a better word, onto the animals of Oz, and how the people are duped by it, you know? It's kind of like Hamilton, Who Lives or Dies, Who Tells Your Story. Like, who gets to decide who is good, who is evil, who's controlling those narratives, and how do you navigate that? How do you discern that? Is, again, very pertinent for our current times. When I think about not so much the musical, I know I'm talking about the musical, but when I think about how well received the film has been, and I'm sure there are other reasons I've mentioned previously about Zeitgeist, but also it seems to me from what I've heard that the director really respects the genre of musical. So as a movie musical, it's done very well because no one's shying away from the fact that it's a musical. I do think there are just a lot of things that are touched on theme-wise in Wicked that it feels really close to the bone at the moment. I've been saying for like a really long time that I think ragtime needs to come back for a similar reason. I think ragtime, especially when it comes to the themes of race and immigration in ragtime, for a long time I've been like, ragtime needs to be put on, not like small productions, like it needs to be back on the West End and Broadway. I don't think it's ever come to the West End, to be honest. I think it's a very American story. I don't think it would do well on the West End, but Broadway definitely needs to go back to Broadway. I think Wicked is similar. I think it's a more palatable musical to do it with, obviously, because of the zeitgeist, and, you know, it's fantasy, and I think it's less on the nose. Like, not that ragtime is too on the nose, but because it's set in our real world and involves real characters, like historical figures that existed as alongside the fictional ones, like, I think ragtime can be a little bit too close to the bone for like huge commercial success. I think Wicked the reason it's doing so well is because not only is it entertaining for people who, like, all of those themes I've just talked about are going to go over their head, but also for people who are starting to plug in or can just feel in their bones that something isn't right. I think it has a lot of the things in it that we're all witnessing and experiencing and feeling right now. You know, I think there are a lot of people who've never been interested in politics who are feeling unease and feeling like something's not quite right and I'm not happy, who don't know why that is, like Glinda does. There are a lot of people who are feeling like we just need to reject the system and smash it down. How do I do that without completely uprooting my life? Or people who are just like, we just need to uproot my life and smash the system. So like that's Elphaba and Fiero, right? We're all feeling it, and I think even in times that have felt less politically, socially fraught, you know, there's always injustice in the world. There are always things that aren't right. Like in the UK, we've lived through over a decade of austerity, like my entire adult life in austerity. So yeah, were there like massive wars and conflicts and genocides and, you know, native peoples speaking up for their right to their indigenous lands in multiple countries, like so vocally with social media? No, not all the time. Or if it was happening, I personally wasn't plugged into it. But even then, like, there was still a feeling of like, things aren't right, things aren't fair. How do you cope with that? Do you try and coast through it, dancing through life? Do you dedicate your entire existence to bringing it down? Do you try and find a middle ground? Like, what do you do? These are all very live questions that no matter what is happening in the world, in your country, in your community, they're always there in the back of your mind. It's just whether you choose to engage with that or if you're being distracted from that as well. So yeah. The last thing I want to talk about is where I think the musical is of its time. And this is going to be very, very brief because, like I said, I think there's lots of reasons that it resonates. But I've been thinking about, like, if this musical was, or this story was written today, or if we wanted to take today and take the lessons of Wicked, what could we learn from that? And the big thing that I just kept on thinking about when I was rethinking about this show, and you know how it is, so if you're on team, actually whichever team you're on, if you're team Elphaba or team Glinda, in your own ways it's still smash the system. It's just like, do you spend your whole life trying to smash the system, or do you play the system up to the point where you can take it over and just hope you don't get corrupted? Because I think that's a very real risk you run if you're like, yeah, I'm gonna play the system right up to the point where I can be the CEO and then I'm gonna change everything. And it's like, I don't know, but the road up is pretty cushy. Do you want to change it? Will you have the courage and fortitude to make your life materially worse when you're in the position to make that decision, you know? Who knows? But the first thing that I thought about was the fact that Elphaba should have organized. Like, it, again, in the book, I think there is a little bit more of that. I haven't read the book in over 10 years. I cannot speak to the book. But in the musical, the only real reference is in, again, those little interjections from like the populace saying, I heard some rebel animals have given her food and shelter. That's the only reference we have to Elphaba actually working with the animal resistance for their own emancipation, kind of thing. And yeah, you can't, like, you've got to get to the point where we're in like the Wizard of Oz, but from their perspective, and you need to sort out the love triangle. Like, I get it, I get it. And it's one of the things where, like, the fact that the film is 2 films, I really hope they actually explore this, because that's what I want to see. I want to see if and how Elphaba actually does a Star Wars and actually like joins the resistance or whatever, or the rebels, and you know, they do a trench run and blow up the Death Star. Obviously that doesn't happen, but you know, they try to. The fact that Elphaba is kind of alone by the time we get to the Wizard of Oz territory, like what caused her to splinter off and do her own thing, if that's what happens. I don't know, I'm not the author, but just taking the musical on its face, assuming Elphaba didn't really organize, if she was just like, yeah, can I just hang out with you and I'm going to be doing my own magical thing over here, y'all are over here, like, that was the mistake. In kind of the more activism communities, especially now, that's what everyone is talking about, is about building community. I've written a blog post on this. I don't know if it's up. If it's up, I'll link it below. But yeah, oh, by the way, I updated my website. Check it out. But yeah, I wrote a blog about community and what that looks like in the theatre world. That's what everyone's talking about, is like organising, like joining groups, joining organisations, building community, fostering community. Elphaba's not doing any of that. From what we can see on its face, she's just kind of going around fecking shit up and doing her own thing. She's not organised, and she doesn't have community support around her, and that's what she needed to do. Now, that could have just been from her own trauma, always being the outsider. Can I relate? Of course. But that's what she needed to do. She needed to build a bridge, get over it, and start making connections with animals and being like, okay, how can my skills help your cause? Let's do this together. Or maybe they rejected her because of what she did to the monkeys. You know what? That could be an interesting story of her being like, I want to do good. And the animals are like, but what did you do to these monkeys? And she's like, it was a mistake. I didn't realize how awful everything was gonna be. And they were like, we want nothing to do with you. You mutilated our kin. And she's like, oh no, well, that would have been interesting. Like, Elphaba being cancelled, I mean, they wouldn't do it because everyone would be like, the animals don't deserve saving, Elphaba's great. But like, that would be interesting. I don't think that happens in the book, so I don't think it would be like canon, but you know, that would be interesting. Either way, that's what Elphaba needs to do. And if she'd done that, maybe she would have been more successful without having to die. Does she die? Does she not die? Who knows? Another thought that I had just whilst talking is Glinda. She learns the lessons and realizes that, you know, I'm in a position of power. I'm gonna put things right. I think that is obviously a very optimistic way of seeing things. It also kind of codes everything in the musical of that, like, it wasn't the system that was bad, it was the people who were bad, because Elphaba can't exist in the system still. She can't be rehabilitated back into the system. Maybe there's a future, like a sequel moment, whether it's made or not, or in someone's headcanon, where Glinda does slowly deconstruct the system in a way that is palatable and acceptable to the populace to allow Elphaba to come back as and when she's ready. But again, musical on its face, it's a regime change. It's not a system change. And depending on how you feel about what's happening right now today, you know, there are a lot of people who were like, the system has to change for the planet, for the people on the planet, for the animals on the planet. You know, the systems that we have in place are not working and are not sustainable. That's another thing where it's like, the musical itself is of its time. I think it's more of the early to mid 2000s, and let's face it, the musical would have been written earlier than that, so at least the millennium, probably in the works a bit before that because of the amount of time it takes to really write and develop a musical. Like, issues aren't seen as systemic yet. It's seen as there are bad people in power. The system will work if the people are good people, rather than let's change the system and build community. And I think if Wicked were written today, Elphaba would be joining a resistant movement and being like, I'm going to be the Elphaba Flying Monkeys faction of this movement, and we're going to coordinate and do some shit. And Glinda, you know, after ousting Madame Morrible and the Wizard, would, you know, hold free elections or something, or be like, I'm going to be the magical, like, peacemaker. But even then, it's like, that's not what's needed. I don't know. Maybe she'd be like, I'd be like the magical president, like in this interim, like do a George Washington and Hamilton situation of being like, we've won the war, we're now gonna like split Oz up into like political districts, and there's going to be a parliament of some kind, and we're going to have elections. Like that would be what Glinda would do. She'd be like, I'm going to oversee this transition of political system. Animals can have their own representative. That it's all going to be great. And then Fiero would, I don't know, just hang out. Fiero would probably be like, does this mean I'm abolishing my monarchy? And then maybe that would be an interesting story of like Fiero being like, oh no, wait, now I can't be a prince anymore because we're becoming a democracy. Make up your own headcanon in what would happen in this alternate reality when Wicked was written today and not nearly 20 years ago / 20 years ago. Actually, it was written 20 years ago, so 20 years ago. Yeah, my final thoughts on Wicked. Again, this is just my opinion. You can think what you want. I don't mind. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. My channel is tiny. Any engagement would be useful. Yeah, number one, Wicked is always going to be nostalgic for me. It was my coming of age musical. I'm never going to have horrendously bad things to say about Wicked. But secondly, I don't think there are horrendous things to say about Wicked. Yes, in terms of the political themes and how the characters deal with it, it is very much of its time, I think. It's, you know, it takes a very individualistic approach to how these problems can be solved, because that's what we were fed would solve things. We were told people are the problem, not the systems in place. It's only really in the last, and again, this is me being aware of it. As I've become more aware, I'm just seeing more and more a lot of the discourse being about system change and fostering community, and that dialogue, some of it being like, this is what we've always had to do, but a lot of it being like, guys, this is the mindset we need. Leave behind that old mindset, this is the mindset we need, which makes me think, and it might just be as more people are becoming more socially and politically conscious, or it might just be like also an attitude change within activist communities. I don't know, because I'm kind of new. Yeah, I do think the way that the characters deal with the political themes that come up in the story are of their time. However, I don't think it's like, oh, then you can't like watch this and glean anything from it, because it takes that individual mindset. It does a very good job, I think, still, of getting us to think about like, what is our response? Like, what would our response be in these fictional situations, and how does that apply to what's happening now? Like, are we going to do an Elphaba and be like, I completely reject this, I reject this system, I'm going to go off and do my own thing and try and find my people and try and build something better? Are we going to be a Glinda of like, you know what, I'm going to play the system as much as I can, as long as I'm not hurting anyone, so that I can be in a position of change? Or am I going to do a Fiero and just, I don't know, just storm out on my engagement party? Fiero, bless him, I think he's just very lost and confused, and he knows Shizzle is wrong, and he just, you know, I mean, he's just there to be the love interest, let's be honest. Fiero is not that deep of a character, but like, if we're trying to give him some depth, I think he's just trying to figure it out and doesn't really know what to do. I guess Fiero is like, are we going to educate ourselves a bit more? You know, find the people who know about stuff and listen to them. That's the Fiero option. And then quick fire round as to why we love Wicked. The music still holds up. It still slaps. Defying Gravity, The Wizard and I, bops. Popular, really fun song. I've got to say, like, Elphaba had the better song. Even Team Glindas were like, yeah, Elphaba has the better songs. Although everyone hates I Couldn't Be Happier. Sorry, quick tangent and then we'll wrap this up. You can, if you don't want to hear any more of my thoughts, click off, thanks for coming. Everyone hates I Couldn't Be Happier. And yes, as a song, it's not the best. It's really long and expositional, but it has the best character moment in the entire show. Glinda's verse, when Fiero storms off, and she's like, that's why I couldn't be happier, though it is, I admit, the tiniest bit. Like, that whole verse is, I whenever I need to listen to music more because it really helps my mood, but I'm really bad at doing things that are good for me. Whenever I listen to Wicked and I listen to that song, I love singing that verse. It's just so, it makes me tear up. It's beautiful because it's just a woman trying to figure out, like, why isn't this working? Like, why isn't this working? It's beautiful. I love it. I'm gonna be honest, that verse, I love the writing. I love the lyric. It's beautiful. I love it. But Defying Gravity, No Good Deed, oh my God, Will mein Verkeik, so good, so good. And it slaps in German. Like, I haven't heard all of Wicked in German, but like No Good Deed in German, flippin' slaps. I had this video idea, I never got around to filming it, but if you want to see it, let me know, of like, not rating as in like rating, but like sharing my favorite non-English language musical theatre performances, because I have a few, and that's one of them, and oh, so good. So yeah, that's why we love Wicked. Why else do we love Wicked? I think that's it. I think it's the music and the story for Wicked. The choreography I've heard is good, but I feel like choreography dates really quickly. Dances, if there are any dancers watching, let me know in the comments, but I feel like dance dates really quickly. I might be wrong. I'm not a dancer. Dancers sound off if you're like, no, the choreography still slaps. Like, what are you chatting about? Fair. The costumes are still really fun, really interesting. The whole design of it really, like, it feels very Aussian. You know, sometimes you'll see pictures of shows and you're like, this could be anything. I don't know what this is. Like, Wicked feels like Wicked, and like, it's still really lush and gorgeous. I think music and story for Wicked. Yeah, so those are my thoughts kind of looking back on the musical and what it meant to me, how I feel about it as a theatre kid for whom this was their coming of age, like, musical. Let me know your thoughts on Wicked the musical. Have you seen it? Do you enjoy it? Have you seen the film yet? Should I see the film? Like, let me know if I should just get over myself and see it. And also, have you read the book? Like, because the book is very different. Let me know all of your thoughts. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate you guys stopping by in one of my sporadic uploads. If you did enjoy this video, please consider liking and subscribing. Would love to have you on the channel. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you to anyone who's recently subscribed and is new here. Hello. I know I'm really bad at like commenting and stuff and responding to comments, but I do see you and I do appreciate you. Thank you so much. Stay tuned for more theatre content from a UK perspective. Let me swallow. And I will see you all in my next video. Bye, friends.